Hey everybody, and welcome to Color Girl YouTube. I have a super cute project I want to share with you today, and I just want to get right to it. We are going to sew these adorable heart units. So I'm not sure whether to call it a block. It's not really a block, it's more like a row. But hopefully you guys will see a lot of fun things that you can make with this. I just kind of got the idea a couple of weeks ago. I thought I want to make something with hearts and something that I hadn't seen before, and this was what I came up with. I think they're super cute, and we can make as many rows as we want to do a baby quilt, a big quilt. And the best of all is that it's perfect for scraps. So you can grab a bunch of your scraps like I did from your stash. You can get a pretty rainbow fat quarter bundle at colorgirlquilts.com. Whatever you choose, fabrics wise, this is going to be a really fun, quick, and easy project to whip up for somebody that you love or to enjoy yourself. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so when it comes to cutting our heart blocks, you're going to be doing 2 rows essentially at the same time. So basically each row consists of 2 layers of heart. So I have this finished one here so you can kind of visualize where we're going as we lay out and cut our pieces. Okay, so for each heart block you're going to need 2 rectangles of the print that are 3.5 by 6.5 inches. Okay, and then you'll also need 4 little background squares in a light fabric or something that contrasts with your heart fabric, and each of those are going to be 1.5 inch squares. Okay, so I'm going to show you first how to plan your colors and fabrics for your row, and then I'll show you how to mark them and get them ready to sew. Okay, so I have a bunch of 3.5 by 6.5 inch rectangles cut here and ready to go. And again, since we're doing 2 rows, we need a set for the top hearts and a set for the bottom hearts. So you're going to need a total of 7 full sets of 2 rectangles, and then for the little half ones on each end you'll need 1 3.5 by 6.5 rectangle. Okay, so your first one is going to be a full heart, so you're going to need 2 matching fabrics, 3.5 by 6.5 inch rectangles, and then do the second one. And the things that I'm thinking about as I'm laying out these pieces is I want to make sure that there's contrast between the fabrics because they're going to sit right next to each other. So if you look, like the orange and the blue and the green contrast really nicely with the background fabric and with each other so that your heart shapes stand out really nicely. So for this row I'm going to start with this yellow and then the pink, and then I have this dark blue kind of texty print, and then this bright green is the same as that one, so I think I'll switch that up for this kind of speckly print one. Okay, since they're going to sit next to those. All right, so and then the next row, which is going to basically fit inside of these like a puzzle to create the second layer of hearts. The first one is going to be a half a heart, so it's just going to be a single 3.5 by 6.5 inch rectangle. And then you'll have a full heart, so you need 2. And notice again, these are going to sit right next to the ones above them, so you want to make sure you have really good contrast there. And then I have a blue one, and I think I'll put this green one here since I moved it down from the other row. And then the last one in the row is also going to be a single rectangle to create a half of a heart. Okay, Now, when you go to sew these together, you want to make sure that you have the correct angle so that your blocks create heart shapes. And this can be a little tricky to make sure because you don't want it to end up with your angles going the wrong way. You want them to come together so that the fabrics that match create that heart shape. So I found that the easiest way to do that is to imagine that you're going to sew the one above the fabric on the first row to the fabric on the second row, and go ahead and fold it with them both face up. Fold the top one down into the angle that you want it to be. So I want it to finish into this shape like this. So I am going to fold it like that, and then so that I can visualize it, and then when I open it up I know which way to sew. So I'm going to make sure that I sew it like this so that when I open it up it looks like that. Okay, and I'll take my ruler and mark that. So take your ruler and place it on the angle that you want to sew. And if you want to double check, you can always flip your fabric up again and just make sure that it's going the right angle that you want it. And your ruler should hit right at the corner of the green underneath and right at the corner of the yellow on top. And just use a pen, or if you have fabric marking pencil, to draw a line there. That's going to be your sewing line. Okay. And then for the second one, for the second yellow heart, part of the heart, and the first purple, now for this one I want the angle to go like this so that I'm forming my yellow heart, and like this to form my purple heart. Okay, so if we think about, if we do the folding technique again, if I lay that on top and look at how it's going to turn out once it's sewn, I want it to be like that. So it's going to be here. Line those up. Make sure that I have the angle right. Open it and mark it. Okay, and continue to do that until you've done your entire row of pieces. And then you're going to go to your sewing machine and sew on these marked lines for each one. Okay, now that I have sewn those marked lines, I also took the pieces to the ironing board and pressed those seams so they're nice and flat. Now here's an important tip. As you lay out your pieces in a row after you've sewn them, if you do every other one going the opposite way for pressing, then they will fit nicely when you sew them together and give you a little bit smoother, less bulky finish. So what I mean by that is, for example, for this first one, I left the green one flat and folded the yellow one up and pressed it like that. And that means that the fabric, the seam, is pointed toward the yellow where it's pressed. For this one, I left the yellow one flat and folded the purple one down and pressed it, and that makes it so this seam is pressed toward the purple. So as you can see, when I eventually go to sew these together, those seams are going to oppose each other and give you a little less bulk in behind that point. Okay, before you go on, let's go ahead and trim the excess fabric here. And you'll just want to make it down to about 1/4 of an inch from your seam. Oops. Oh my goodness. And then do the same thing on the other. Just make sure you don't cut off the pieces that are supposed to be there. You only cut the excess behind. Believe me, it's easier than you might think to make that mistake. Okay, so now I have the makings of my yellow heart and half of my purple one. Now what I would usually do is do this step over and over to get on the entire row of all of these units to get pairs like this, and chain piece them so that you can do several at once and get them all to this step. Okay, so once you have a row of fabric pieces at this step, then you're going to take your 1.5 inch background fabrics, and you'll need to have one on each corner of the rectangle unit. Okay, obviously you won't leave them here, but just for showing you how to sew, I'll place those here. And since these are smaller, you may not need to mark them. You can just kind of eyeball the sewing from one corner to the other. But what you want to make sure is that you're always sewing from the middle of the print fabric below down to the inside, and that will give you the correct angle for opening those up and creating the points of your heart. Okay, so for each of these units, you're going to use 4 1.5 inch background squares, sew them on the diagonal on all 4 sides, and then bring them back to the cutting mat once again. Okay, back again, and I've sewn on the little 1.5 inch squares to each of the corners on both of my pieces. Now for these, since they're so small, I prefer to just use my scissors to snip off the excess fabric on the back behind the seam. So do that on all 4 corners of each one, and we are starting to see hearts come together, right? There's our yellow heart. Now at this point, I will go ahead and match these 2 units together and sew along the inside seam to create my heart. And you can continue this process on all of the hearts in your row and sew them together first in pairs. Then you'll sew the pairs together to make 4, and so forth until you've sewn an entire row of hearts. So I will sew these together. And here is our finished yellow heart. This is going to be the first block in our row. You'll just continue those same steps all along your row of hearts until you have as many as you want, and then you can sew them together. And as you can see, the top heart will be the first one to come together, but then when you sew it to the units next to it, you'll start to see the upside down hearts appear as well. So I think it's a fun little design, and I'd love to see how you use it. So keep going. Let's sew several of these together and see how it's going to look. What do you think? Have you gotten a few of these made? I am loving how they are going to come together. So I have completed 3 rows. I didn't sew them together yet because I wanted to kind of think a little bit more about what I might want to do with them. I intentionally chose fabrics for these end hearts that are only half blocks that I have more fabric of, so that if I decide I want to make it bigger, I have enough of those fabrics that I can make it bigger. Isn't this cute? I love it. And then the thought also occurred to me as I was working that this might be a fun project to incorporate other pieces in. Whether you want to do like a row of hearts and then a row of just a pretty large scale fabric that you like and want to show off, and then another row of hearts, or maybe different pieced rows mixed in with the hearts. The idea that I had was from this book that I have, Stitch Your Story. I have been wanting to do some like pieced text for a while, and the idea's kind of been running around in my head, and I haven't really done anything with it. But the more I was making these hearts, the more I thought this might be the perfect project to try some text. So you could make your rows longer and add like a row that has words, a favorite saying, or a person's name. I think it'd be a super cute baby quilt to add a name. Just whatever. So I'm still kind of debating what I want mine to say. I could do something simple like love or I love you, or I was thinking about just be kind. But I'm not sure yet. But I would love to know if you guys have done any pieced text or incorporated text into your quilt designs ever. I'm really liking kind of the trend toward doing more of that. I like the text fabric, and I know that's super popular. But I'm kind of feeling the need to do some pieced text, so I might have to do something out of this book. So share with us if you have any experience with doing pieced text. But back to the hearts. I hope that you've enjoyed sewing these with me. Again, a great way to pull out those scraps and just enjoy some pretty colors and some really easy, simple piecing. Okay, if you need fabric for your hearts, don't forget to visit colorgirlquilts.com. I've got lots of bundles. Lots of these prints are also available in the shop. Not all of them are from my stash. And if you would like a copy of the Stitch Your Storybook to do a little bit of text like mine, I also have these books for sale. So thank you for watching, and be sure and like and subscribe, Color Girl YouTube. And leave a comment. I'd love to know what you think about sewing your hearts. All right, until next time, bye-bye.